Well, welcome to the Obsessively Outspoken podcast. I am joined by Heather Ferri, author and healer of the book Victim to Victory, Healing Generational Abuse from My Bloodline. Thank you, Heather, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Remington. I pulled my book up just in case they wanted to get a good view.
Okay, good. So I read your book, and it was a very powerful book, and I'm so glad that you and I have the opportunity to talk about it in detail.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first question I have is, what prompted you to write this book, and what was the process like opening up yourself to the world and telling your truth?
I started getting sick, and no one could really figure out what was going on with my body. And I had just started studying the healing arts and awakening some memories from my childhood abuse. Well, the sickness grew and grew, and it would come and go. Chronic pain, inability to use one of my legs a lot, and a lot of congestion. I grew up with a lot of health issues, as you'll read in my book. So as time went on, I was doing everything possible in the healing arts. And I was lying on the couch one night, and I heard this little voice saying, "Write your story." And I just thought it was God saying, maybe this would be a good healing tool. So I started to write my story. And honestly, I was so mentally congested, had so much brain damage, PTSD, that the first draft was really like all over the place. It was a mess. And I remember giving it to one of my clients who's a psychologist to read, and she was very loving and patient with the writing, because it was really a writing of a fifth grader, really,
Okay.
in essence. But she said, keep rewriting. Just keep rewriting your story. The muscles are going to get stronger, and you're going to become more articulate. That little girl has a story to share. And that was really probably a pivotal moment, because I could have had somebody say, "Oh, this isn't very good. You're not a writer. Your English isn't very good." I could have had somebody criticizing me more, but I had really, from the start, God planted some beautiful people in my life to embrace and support me. So it was a process. I looked at it more as unraveling memories that I didn't remember, that were entangled in my body. I was very frozen. And probably 6 years later, I was tossing around the idea of publishing my book, which honestly, I never thought I would be somebody that would do that. And the idea of shopping for a publisher was really daunting to me. I'd been in show business, so I knew sort of that world of trying to convince somebody that your work is, worth, and went through some of that process. And really, I'll be honest with you, after a couple months, I had gotten some rejection, but the rejection was so positive. Every company, like the companies I really wanted that were bigger and dealing with the holistic spiritual world, they usually go for the names, and I wasn't a name. I wasn't a name teacher. And so, but they were positive. They said, this is a good book. This is good writing, which then kept me going. If I had been knocked down a few times, I might have just, set it on the shelf, because this was a very insecure project for me. Insecure in the sense that I knew I had an important story to share, but I was deathly afraid. And if there was going to be an obstacle, it might have kept me back. But God kept me moving forward, bringing different people in my life. And basically one night, I just got frustrated with the mailings and researching publishers. And I started to cry, like really cry at my computer desk. And I started to pray, and I said to God, if you want me to publish this book, if you want this book out there, I need some help. Like, self-publishing is hard. and I wanted it to be a good book. I wanted to have, be put together in a good package, even if that meant I would publish it again later differently. I
Sure.
needed help the first time around to understand it. And I prayed and I said, if this is supposed to be, you got to help me, because I don't know what I'm doing. And I literally went on Google and Remington, I mean, you read my book. I have no idea how this website came up, but Christian publishing website came up. And at first, I am not religious. I am universal. I work with the Holy Spirit, but I work with the idea that the Holy Spirit is all the descendant masters, all the masters from the other side, that we are all one, that we are all connected in kindness and love. Organized religion, I don't do. I have a lot of friends. I have actually counseled pastors and priests, but I don't do. So that's just, so I want to say that. So when this website came up, I was like, my book's a bit metaphysical. It's a bit out of the box. I'm questioning a lot of things. I have a couple of Jesus experiences that are not normal. I immediately said to myself, they're not going to be interested. So I immediately was shutting the door. But I saw the word Jesus pop up the screen in their writing.
Okay.
And so it made me go to the next screen, and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to email the literary agent. I got nothing to lose. So I email her a brief synopsis, and then I call her the next day, and she picks up the phone, which is really rare in the business world. I was like, wow, she picked up. And I am doing the complete opposite of what you're supposed to do. Most people are supposed to try to say, my book's really great, come on board with me. But I'm saying, you're probably not going to be interested in this.
Wow.
It's not, I don't know, I'm completely shutting the door. And she said, well, I want you to tell me about it. And I shared with her, well, it's the story of how, I come from an all-American family. And of course, my parents had problems. They married young. And my mother one day switched mental states for no reason and would come into my room in the morning and start to choke me and say really horrible things to me. And then she would switch states. She'd eat her chocolate cake or her sugar, which was her drug. And then by the end of the day, she was a different person again. And this was very confusing, and it went on in my life, and how that affected my health, and how that affected my choices of my career and show business, and how that affected my personal relationships, and it goes on. And I said, I work with a couple sciences, Kundalini yoga, specifically the brain protocols, Kangen water, specifically electrolyzed reduced water. Well, this was crazy. She had a Kangen water machine. So she already knew that world.
Okay.
And she knew about Kundalini yoga. So she knew these sciences. And so a lot of times, and I write about it in my book too, Christianity has a lot of judgment towards yoga. It has a lot of judgment that's not truth. There is made up yogas, but this yoga specifically has PubMed research. And when you have PubMed research, you have to reference that as science. And so that's been my journey as well, as teaching people the science of this, as opposed to whatever your religion is, dogma, whatever your belief system is. That's not, push that aside. And when we are working in meditation and prayer, we're working with something that you feel connected to, that's higher, that's good. I've never had a client in the last 15 years that left my practice not feeling good and not feeling connected actually to Jesus, but Jesus in the sense that Jesus is within us.
Sure.
It's not something outside. Somebody's not going to give you the power. Consciousness is in you. So for me, we spent an hour and we were very connected. She felt very connected. So I submitted. And then 2 days later, it would take about 5 days for them to review and decide whether they would move forward in helping me. It's kind of a self-publishing contract. where we're both working together, which in some ways is really nice in the beginning because legally you have all the rights still. And I was concerned about that. I didn't want to legally give over my story to somebody, and I
Okay.
wasn't going to change it. I would change the grammar, but I wasn't going to change the story for somebody. So that was very important for me, the integrity of that. So within 2 days, I got the meditation. I have to do another rewrite, like a big rewrite, like an edit. So I went through and spent 16 hours a day on it. And I said to her before they agreed, I said, I did another edit, it's substantial. And she says, they want to see it, send it. And I knew then that they were interested because they wouldn't have spent the time. So that's the process.
Right.
The book is published. You're trying to get online and get people to know about the book. But part of me was very shy, very scared in the beginning, because you're right. I'm putting my whole soul out there. And I knew that if my family had not read the book, which to my knowledge, the only person who's read my book is my niece, and she actually participated in the cover, which was really beautiful, that they wouldn't understand the healing in the book, that there's actually a healing and it's not a judgment and a blame towards my mom or the abuser. But as time went on and there were different practitioners and healers around the world, therapists referring my book to clients, I would get emails or messages. Thank you so much. This is my story. You're giving me so much hope. Those messages started to build my strength. And I was like, oh, this is why God wanted this. And then now having the confidence and strength, it's been, a good amount of time since the book's been out. I'm very proud of it. I feel that it's distinguishing me as saying to the world, I am a trauma expert. I am a trauma expert with experience personally and
Sure.
personally within my career. I do not have a degree that says I'm a trauma expert from a medical clinic, but guess what? Doctors and therapists are hiring me internationally now. They want to learn, what did you do to heal your brain, your severe PTSD, your triggers? How did you change your life? And so it takes time. But what led me each piece of the way now is the prayer, the connection to what I define as God,
Okay.
and listening. And listening, because you can get a message and not listen.
Sure.
But to listen.
Good. And the second paragraph of the introduction of your book, you stated, and I quote, I believe every soul is born with the birthright to be happy, healthy, and holy. But something happened when you were 8 to disrupt that. And you talked a little bit about that a little while ago, but can you get into detail about that experience in your life?
Yeah, that's a very powerful message. We're all born with this right, but we come into a family system. I believe our souls choose that family system to learn soul lessons. So part of the higher consciousness of my philosophy is now, after all the pain and the anger and the lower conscious thinking, why me? Why me? Why did my mother do this? What's wrong? That I now see the magic in my parents. I see how beautiful they were in playing out what they needed to play for me to be who I am right now. With that said, when you're traumatized as a child, whether that's childhood abuse, sexual abuse, whether that's being a part of 9/11, or even right now with the virus, that people are experiencing, you can become sick. And when you become sick, you tend to be lower conscious. It's just normal. You tend to think more negatively. That's when I think that that darkness can come in and it can hold you down. And you can forget that it's your birthright. to be happy, healthy, and holy. Some people forget that, they lose the fight. Part of the thing that when people interview, I usually do a free 30-minute consultation with clients, and part of that interview between us is the work that I do is you're gonna get sick a little bit. It's gonna trigger you. You're gonna cry a lot, but you're gonna have all these amazing tools and be better at the end of the road. But I have to feel and know that that soul has the strength and the will and the fight to work through all of what needs to be healed, to come back to our truth that we are healthy, happy, and holy. And it took me, a lot of people read my book, and it took a lot of years. It wasn't an overnight process for me. Really, in essence, 20 years of my life spending and utilizing things that didn't work and throwing them out, paying out of pocket for it all, and realizing I'm worth it. I'm going to pay whatever I have to get to the healthy, happy, and holy. And being on the other side, I think, is really enticing for people now, because they look at me, they can see I'm healthy, and they go, okay, most people who go through this much trauma, they don't look like you. You know what I mean? They don't feel like you. So what's the secret? What's the hidden secret? And there is. It's these sciences and how to work them and put them together. So I want to remind people, if they're feeling down and they're feeling depressed, you can get through it with these sciences. You can get through it, and you can come to the other side, to keep that hope.
I know you had a period in your life where you dealt with isolation and PTSD, and no one really came to your aid. Can you talk about that and maybe give some advice to people who are currently dealing with that same level of isolation and trauma?
Yeah. I haven't talked about it. So I was sick for many years, but there was about 3 years that I was really sick. And a family member that I would reach out to wasn't compassionate. He felt that I should get diagnosed with MS because of the shaking. The shaking is part of releasing trauma out of the body. There's a science to it. Peter Levine was the psychologist that created the foundation of that. But I knew enough information that the shaking was releasing trauma and the emotions and the crying, because I never cried as a child when I was being choked. I froze. That's a dangerous place to be in. If you freeze, that's a hard place to unravel in the body and the mind. So I was criticized, and I was very mentally unstable. I reached out to some of my family members, and they would help for a moment, but when they saw me, when they were in my presence, I think they couldn't handle seeing how sick and in pain I was, and they left. And that broke my heart, literally. I, looking back, don't know. I do know, okay, I say I don't know how I survived it, because not only was I very sick, but I was heartbroken because I had no example of unconditional love. And so what eventually led me was, I do equate the electrolytes reduced water, which is Kangen water. I drank 15, 16 glasses a day. Most doctors would say that's too much water. That's going to hurt your kidneys. It did not hurt my kidneys, because that's how much trauma I had. That's how much acidic I was. So that water would allow me to cry and cry and cry, and not go to deep darkness. But as I was crying and unraveling the trauma, I was really praying to God, having conversations that weren't comfortable, to Jesus, having conversations that weren't comfortable. So that isolation, looking back, what I craved, to be honest, and I said that if I could ever create a trauma clinic, that I would have love coaches. I would have people that are just full of love and happiness, to, once I'm pulling out trauma and the clients, resting, to just touch them with love. Just like this. This is $1 million. when you are in the right energy in the right place. In fact, that's people fly all over the world now to be on my healing table. And everybody says within the first 20 minutes of my hands working on them, they have a religious experience, a healing experience they've never had before with a Reiki master. They've never had before with a massage master. They've never had before with physical therapy. That's because I have the Holy Spirit within me now. And they are receiving and being poured into their spirits unconditional love, so they know they're not being judged by their story, by their sins, so they can unravel what they need to unravel in a safe place. And for me, I had to do that on my own. And it definitely built a resilience in me, but it definitely also made me, and I will say, even being isolated right now with the virus, part of me has no problem with it at this moment because I'm healthy and vibrant. I'm working on Zoom with clients around the world, but it brings up the memories of that time period where I was sick for 3 years. And right now I'm questioning, like, who do I have in my life that would be there if I was sick? I don't really know the answer to that. I do think my brother would. My brother apologized at the end of the years that I was sick. He apologized and said that he regretted not helping me more. He didn't help me, and he acknowledged that. And I think that he was just too afraid because he has some things that he has to heal within himself. People are too afraid to know that my mom did these things. And what I want to share with them is she's not a bad human being. It's just that this is trauma, generational abuse in her wiring. Obviously, she was severely abused by my grandmother. And if we don't have conscious communication skills and we don't deal with conflict, we're not going to heal. We're not going to get to a higher place. So abandoning somebody like me, what does that say, to my tribe? We look at the world right now, what we're in. Are we going to abandon people? Are we going to abandon our medical field by not stepping in and helping them who are in the front lines of facing this virus every day? So it brings up a lot of questions for me about my future and who I invest in. Who are my friends? My friends didn't show up for me. The people that I gave all the time to. I'm a giving person. I give free counseling. I give free energy. I give free water. I give free, and they didn't show up. And so it was disheartening. And I think people need to hear that, because there's a lot of people out there right now. And before I was sick, I would go to people who were single and do grocery shopping for them. I would do things for them, because if you've never been on your own and you don't have a family system that's helping you, it's scary sometimes.
Right.
And so for me, I want to send that message out to people. You don't, just because somebody looks like, okay, they're single and they have it together, it's hard, sometimes when you're sick. And I know recently, a couple weeks ago, I wasn't feeling well. And Remington, you called the next day to check up on me. And that really, really meant a lot to me. I really felt that you were thinking about me. And I guess because I come from such severe psychological abuse, I also attracted people that only took from me. And so when you heal that, when you go through the healing process in my program, at the end, you will not attract the same type of people. So that was also what I had to face. I was attracting people who only took from me. And I felt that a lot with my parents. I felt that there was conditions, and they were never really allowing, it's not about, oh, you did these bad things. I already forgave them. That's not the question. It's about, how are we going to heal this, and how are we going to behave with this? And I want to make another note. This virus is a really interesting thing right now for me as a healer, because a couple years ago, people would come into a studio, right? They would come face to face and work with me. And a lot of them were extremely toxic and extremely draining. Their energy, It's like thinking of darkness, their energy. And a lot of times I would leave a session, 1 hour, and feel like I had been through a war. And through the time period of the years, I learned that people weren't just hiring me to learn and exercise. People were hiring me to feel my light and my energy, and that has value to it. And I think this virus is going to teach people more about their energy and other people's energy and the value of that. And what I mean by that right now is we are expecting a lot from our doctors and nurses right now, because they are on the front line of not just dealing with sickness, but having to deal with the effectiveness of your energy, your breathing energy
Right.
of a virus. But that virus could be toxic thoughts that can kill people too. It's those jobs are priceless, just like healers are priceless. And we've been devalued for so long, and as I started to move to Zoom, a lot of people in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania were like, well, why would you do that? And this and that. Why? I wanted to say, you spend a day in my shoes and see if you can really do this job effectively long term. And I bet you can. If I want to stay in the game as a healer, as working with people, I've got to create a boundary that allows me to do that. And that's why I started to do Zoom 2 years ago, which was a game changer for me, and only allow certain people to do energy work and price it a lot more and have people fly in and learn all that. So I think this virus is waking people up to, we are energy too. And what is your energy projecting onto somebody else?
Right. Well, you're welcome, by the way, for me checking up on you. I think we have way too many ways to communicate now in 2020 not to check up on people. You can send an email, a text, you can call, FaceTime. And so we use it for everything else. But when it comes time to check on people that we care about, we tend to forget all these ways of communication. So you're welcome.
Yeah.
Now, the purpose of your book is to, and I quote, break the generational baggage, as you also stated in your introduction. Did you eventually accomplish that goal, like the title of your book suggests? Or is it a perpetual process, a journey that you never quite get to, but you learn along the way?
I feel I've broken the generational cycle of abuse. I feel it wholeheartedly in my being, but it took a long time, as you could tell.
So there is an endpoint.
I do. I think there's an endpoint. Even with the virus coming out, I immediately texted my mom and I said, if you need anything, or if you feel like you're coming down with something, I have a Japanese medical device with these waters. I can bring them to you. And she thanked me. That's my unconditional love, And so I feel, yeah, definitely.
Okay, that's good. You talked about how tap dancing and yoga are positive and productive ways to deal with serious issues. You also mentioned using sugar as a way to escape reality. What prompted you to change your diet, and how difficult was that process?
Okay. Yeah. So tap dancing, I started tap dancing when I was 3. And I was blessed when I was in my 20s. I talk about it in my book, working in New York City with the tap masters, Gregory Hines. I was blessed to work with all of those great masters. They actually taught me a lot about having a voice. What do I want to say with the music on my feet? They taught me, they were more concerned about my soul than how I looked. So a lot of people find that chapter in my book very fascinating. And I think it could be a movie in itself. So I'm going to leave it for people to read. But tap dancing was a way for me to express my emotions because I didn't literally have the words to say it. I didn't literally have a voice because I had all this baggage from being strangled and choked. So with that said, then I moved into Kundalini yoga, which was really hard for me at first because I couldn't sit still. I was like, you know, I was like this all the time. I was the workaholic. I was the sugar addict. I got to run and escape because heaven forbid I sit still for a moment and feel. I was really afraid to feel. I had a lot of pain. But the thing about Kundalini yoga is that every yoga set was different. I liked the science part of it. And the first 11-minute meditation, God and me and God are one, was very challenging to me. I did it because it was in class, but I was really angry at God. I was like, honestly, I was like, fuck you, God. Like, you're not here. Where have you been? All this shit you've handed me. Like, I was really negative. But I did the 11 minutes. I mean, I'm a good student. And I think that after 2 or 3 Kundalini yoga classes, I just started feeling better mentally. And so I kept going. I was like, this is working. And it's been a lifesaver. I'm a huge advocate of the science of it. And there's different teachings and different approaches. My view, the way I've come at it is with the Holy Spirit and with the science end of it. And then the sugar, I think I was in denial of the sugar for a very long time. We used to make jokes in our family, with my mom and her sugar and all that. And I think that's common. You joke around the deeper issues. You don't go to the root of why. I mean, I didn't really even know sugar was equated to cocaine in the brain. That made perfect sense to me because my mom ate sugar all day long. That was her drug. It's a drug, and so I watched her eat and soothe her pain, and I copied it. I mean, that's what we do. We copy our environment. And so for me, it took a lot of years. And I would say it's because of all of the yoga and even drinking the electrolytes reduced water that I could slowly sit and address it when it came up. And what I mean by that is I would feel bad about something. I wouldn't be able to communicate or have a voice with it. I'd go to the grocery store. I'd buy a bag of chocolate. I'd eat the whole bag in the car. You know what I mean? Like, you're using it the same that you would use it for pot, the same you would use it for crack, it's the same. That's the addiction. And so there is an addiction brain protocol that I did. I know it's hard. It's not that easy. And it's been a slow process. I'm a vegan now, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful to not be dependent on, I have to grab some chocolate because I don't feel right. I don't feel right emotionally. It's great to have tools to go, well, I want chocolate right now. And it's not bad to eat some sweets, but there has to be a balance. There was no balance for me. So it's nice to go, I want chocolate right now. What's going on with Heather? What's Heather not addressing right now? What's Heather feeling? And it usually goes to repressing my feelings, because in my story, and I think some people experience this, a lot of, I love my family, but they rejected me. They didn't even allow me to have a voice. They never asked me a question about my abuse. It was just, you're wrong. You made it up, and so when you have such extreme, it's painful. You don't know who to talk. Like, you want to talk to your tribe to try to work it out, and they're not capable.
Right.
Because they haven't done their healing work yet to get to the place that they can have a conversation and it not be so personal, to be honest with you.
Right.
But just because this is a universal subject matter. Trauma is what I think. So it's crazy. Somebody was asking me the other day, what would you spiritually say about the virus, like what's going on right now? And I would say, a lot of times in the religious Bible study, they say there's this end of time. and they're praying for Jesus to come back, literally Jesus to come back, or somebody's waiting for Krishna in the yogic world to come back. And this is just my theory, and you can go for it or not, but I think they have sent the virus. This is the darkness, and they're trying to wake us up. And they're saying, you know what, you guys aren't behaving very well. You're destroying Mother Earth. You're not getting along. Let's put you all in your own room. You're just going to have to go in your own room right now. And that is part of the healing process, going with it. I'm going to force you to not have to, and we're going to see what you work out. And death is a part of the cycle of life. People are going to die. That's inevitable. Some of it's soul contracts. Some of it is just circumstances. But it's a part of life. And so it's interesting because I was talking to, I was checking up on my seniors. I work in a senior home, and obviously we're not allowed into the building right now. And I was checking on seeing how they're doing, and they're doing great as far as health wise. Sure. But they're really upset that they can't go out of their room and they can't go play. They're like really upset. They're just sitting there in their small rooms, and I can see how that would be challenging. But if that's all that's going on, then we're happy and blessed with it. But I was cracking up because I was like, that's really powerful. What this virus is forcing us to do on a spiritual level.
I agree. Now, in the first chapter, you talked about your childhood friend from school, Frida. Frida. And you said, and I quote, "I knew racism was wrong, not by my family teaching, but my innate knowledge that all humans are the same." The world that you lived in back then and the world that you live in now, how much has it changed in regards to racism? Do you think it's gotten better? Do you think it's the same? Or do you think racism has exacerbated in the United States?
I actually feel like I can't give a good answer to that because growing up, I was in a school where there was, a good number of Black people, and some of them were my friends, as I talk about in the book, and some of them I know to this day. And there was this underlying tone of racism that was really interesting growing up, because it's kind of like the family masks we wear. Like nobody knows that, my mother's having some issues, but we wear this mask. And that's how I felt in the high school. Teachers would make comments to me because I would hold hands with one of my Black friends down the hall, and there was this sort of like idea that was a bad thing. And I remembered that and took note of it, and it concerned me. But yeah, I didn't see color. And then going to New York City and being in show business, and then being a tap dancer, specifically a hoofer. A hoofer's a tap dancer that makes music with their feet. I was with mostly African-American men. Gregory Hines, Jimmy Sy, Buster Brown, they were all Black, and they all had something in common. They came from a history of slavery. They came from a lineage of not being able to have a voice. And I could relate to that because I felt like a slave in my household. I felt like I had no voice. There was no freedom to say, my mom was scary. I was afraid of her. And so I could relate to this tribe, even though I was white. And I valued that tribe because I respected the fact that they weren't drug dealers and they weren't trying to do harm or violence to society, that they used a musical instrument to entertain people, to bring them joy and happiness, especially Jimmy Slide. He was an amazing host in the clubs in New York City, and he was magical on stage. I mean, just magical. And so watching him, that there was a whole healing and understanding of their world, right? Their world. And then I moved back to Pittsburgh, and I'm in this performing arts school, and there's racism there. I'm seeing the black kids on one side, the white kids on the other side. I'm thinking, are we back in the 60s? What's going on here? And why isn't anyone addressing this? And that concerned me. The DNA lineage of programming. What concerned me in the high school was what the kids were listening to, the music, the words. I didn't feel we're going to stimulate them and make them empowered and better. So I was very upset, and I write a little bit about that in my book. But then I go into the healing arts, and now I'm hired privately. I feel like I am segregated. I'm not in the community anymore right now to really be able to say where we're at with it. I'm not the right person to ask that question at this point. I'm not in the schools yet. I'd like to go back and do programming and stuff like that. I'm more contracted in a different population. So I don't know what to say with that. That is my journey. Yeah.
Okay. What about the Me Too and Time's Up movement? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I tend to be ahead of my times in general. So I knew 10, 15 years ago, reading the rapes and dealing with people who were coming to me, that there was an epidemic, a very serious one. And that a lot of people had amnesia or felt shame and just repressed it. So I had been dealing with that with my work. And I also saw within, a certain population in Pittsburgh, like I would suggest to families like, your daughters should take self-defense classes. They don't need to. Yeah, everything's fine. And then I would give them the cover of Time magazine and the stats on rape in our colleges and universities. It's like sort of the virus. I feel like our president leader was in denial. And I feel like we're in denial a lot of times of trauma. So we have a parallel situation happening here. What is it going to take for us to wake up? Is it going to really take rock bottom? Are we going to really have to lose many, many lives to realize we're in a crisis with the virus? Are we going to have to hit rock bottom and lose everything in our life to realize that we have trauma, that we have childhood abuse, sexual abuse? So when the Me Too movement started to happen, I thought it was a wonderful thing, and it's still happening. Obviously, there's a balance and approach to it. I think the Harvey Weinstein was a celebration and finally seeing somebody get jail time, like real jail time. And that was a declaration of, we are not going to tolerate this anymore. I think that for me, it's getting the right resources to people who are sexually abused, which go to these sciences again, healing. I also think we're in a time period where we're seeing come out all the all the abusers being like, whether they're in the producer of Hollywood, whether they're the CEO of a corporation, whether they're a yoga master, whether they're a priest, we're seeing a lineup of people that we've put on a pedestal. And I think the lesson that we need to learn is, don't put anyone on a pedestal that's on earth. We're all sinners and we're all here trying to do our best. You can work with the other side, angels, spirit guides, your ancestors, Martin Luther King, whoever you believe on side. Work on trying to intuitively, meditatively connect to them. Okay. But don't put human beings on that pedestal, because they're going to fall. And also, it's a brainwashing, following cattle mentality. We have to start working this computer chip to think for ourselves, to ask questions, and to be able to navigate and speak up. I mean, we're in a time period where we need to speak up to our legislators and our senators and our Congress about what we're not okay with. And a lot of people will complain, but they won't do. Action needs to take place. So the Me Too movement's very powerful. I think that we are ignorant as a society at this point of how damaging being raped is to the whole system of the body, that it can take a whole life to heal. and I mean, I hate to say that, but it's true depending on the situation,
Right.
that if we really start to understand that, we'll have more empathy and compassion. And then I think, in the beginning, we didn't have like somebody would come out, we would fluff their story, and we would, say, oh, they want money, or well, of course they should get money. Actually, my theory is because it's going to cost them a lot of money to heal.
Right.
That's just a realistic point of view. I spent a lot of money out of pocket to heal. And that's just a fact, so I think there's a lot of things as we move forward that we're going to be able to create healthier systems legally for the victim, which is wonderful. And hopefully get new programming into our public schools for children so they'll keep repeating this way of living.
Okay. Let's see. When you first moved to New York, you mentioned your dream was to discover your authentic identity, feel happy, and make friends. Where are you with, having a high level of self-identity and self-esteem and self-value and finding everything you were looking for, the happiness and everything else?
I would say I'm just getting there. I'm just getting there. It's been a long journey. I am happy with myself and I'm definitely authentic. That has been a journey, a lot of work. I'm on the beginning process of making new friends. So I'm on a new chapter of that. What was the other thing that you said? Authentic, friends.
Feel happy.
Yeah, and feeling happy. I think that comes with a social support system, and I'm aware that I'm in the process of creating that social support system. Some of my social support system is on the other side of the country in California. So when all this clears up, I am going to make a trip in September to see those people and be with them. Even though they're in California, I feel their love deeply and personally. That's that interconnection, right, that we have, that the internet allows us to create, families and friends.
Now, you said just recently, how recent have you found your authentic self?
How recent? I would say in the last year.
Okay.
And I would say last year, I was hired to go to Mexico to work on a retreat with other facilitators. And I was hired to do the brain work. And in that trip was a paradigm shift for me. The second day into the retreat, a lot of the women were breaking down with trauma, even the facilitators. And I ended up stepping up as the leader, which was, I think, something I was afraid of all my life, is to be a leader. And then I, just went with the flow and did what I do. And I had just an incredible experience being able to heal these women on so many levels that I didn't know I had. And I was in that setting of, there was the ocean and we were under this just beautiful canopy. And I have a lot of Jesus experiences. I felt Jesus beside me. They felt such a beautiful religious, spiritual energy of healing. And that week really changed me. It really shifted me into honoring that I am a healer in this life. Like I was, people have called me throughout the years a healer, and I was really uncomfortable with that word. I'm also uncomfortable with the expectation. If there's no expectation, I feel like, okay, I could come in and do what I do and we'll see what happens, because I surrender in the work. Some people, it's a weird thing because, I was angry when I wasn't healing quickly enough. And I wanted to be healed faster. And I felt, is there something wrong with me? Am I bad? And the truth is there was just a lot to heal. And because there was a lot to heal, there was a lot of new psychology that I had to experience. And so with people, I say you have to be patient. If you want to psychologically change, there's a process to this. And part of sickness can be related to your karma, to your actions. If you have done wrong, if you have stolen a lot of money, and I've had clients that have, you may get sick, and some have, and not get better for a while, or not get better. There's consequences to your actions. And I think that as a society, as we move forward, people start to really understand there's something to this, they'll in essence start to behave better. I hate to say it that way, but your actions are always being seen if you believe in something higher.
Sure. What was it like being added to the Guinness Book of World Records for turning 16 continuous spinning body turns on one foot wearing tap shoes?
So anybody that knew me or saw me as a professional dancer, they knew my turns because I was always hired or doing them. And part of it I learned later on, the obsession with turning, it's like the whirling dervish. It's used as a form of therapy to try to balance the brain out. So it made me feel good. And so that's why I became obsessed with it. When I did that in New York City and created the world record at the time, I'll be honest with you, I could have utilized it more for my career, but I had such a low self-esteem. I was so broken that it was just another award that I had on my shelf, but it didn't mean anything to me. It's interesting because I was just saying to somebody, I kind of wish I could go back in time to my New York showbiz days the way I am now, because I'm healthy, and be able to experience those magical teachers that I had the honor and privilege to dance with on stage and be with, because I would have taken in so much more. But because I had so much brain damage and I was so broken, I wasn't able to appreciate it, to really feel and embrace it and be proud of myself. Yeah. And it's weird because I've been retired for a long time now. I mean, I spent 7-8 years sick, and I'm just now starting to dance for my own happiness. But even in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, if I post a little thing on dancing or something, people they just love to see me dance. And I realized, wow, like I was a good dancer. You don't really, I'm just like, huh, so, yeah, the world record. And somebody ended up a couple years later, actually a teenager, I think she was like 14 or 15, she beat my record. So that's good, because records are supposed to be beaten and moving up the ladder. So I was glad that I created something that stimulates somebody to go, I'm going to do this and work real hard. And
Expect some dance routines popping up on social media anytime soon, or on your website?
Absolutely. I want to do some what I would incorporate as dance therapy stuff with some healing music. So that's coming. I will say this. I did a dance video, I think like 4 years ago, a tap video. I put my tap shoes on one more time to see if I could do anything. And it was hard. Tap dancing's hard. And I could do some stuff. And I did this piece. It was basically to represent my book. And I could turn just around the room, but turning on one foot, I couldn't do it all. And I was like, my brain is different now. It's wild. It was wild. I was like, before, when it was all congested, I could just, and now that it's all together, I was like, 1, 2, 3, that's it. And I thought, I wish, the scientist in me was like, oh, I wish I could have studied that, back then. And then now the way the brain's different. So yeah, but expect some dance videos. They're coming.
Okay. In the chapter titled Dysfunctional Patterns, after you had some difficulties teaching, you decided to go back to school, and you stated, and I quote, I was in the master's program to prove I was smart, to fill my ego and do what society expected. You went on to say, and I quote, "The process felt wrong to me, and I knew my life experiences taught me more than any book could. I walked away feeling I needed to take the road less traveled and find my life's purpose." Can you expound on what is your life's purpose? Well, I guess we all know by now what's your life's purpose, but how do you feel about the educational system today? And how do you feel about, like you said, you're in a field where there are doctors with PhDs and MDs and psychologists with all these degrees behind their name. How do you feel about navigating and weaving through an industry where your credibility may come into question because you walked away from the school system because you felt like your gift, your natural born gift, supersedes any education you could have ever received?
Mm, I
That's a lot to
feel,
unpack. I apologize.
yeah, that's wonderful. No, speak. I feel that our mental health care system is failing. I think the stats show that. And there's several doctors I truly love and follow, and they left what we would call the traditional system. They worked in the traditional system and saw what was failing. And then they left it. And I've studied those doctors. One of them that I'm studying right now is Dr. Daniel Ullman. He has a clinic and he has a book called The End of Mental Illness, which is a really interesting book. And I'll give you an example. Back in the Obama administration, there were a lot of shootings in the country. And there was an epidemic, actually. And I think 13 out of the 17 shootings were white boys specifically, which was an interesting, sort of when we break down stats and categories. And he took so what Obama administration did is they gave millions of dollars into the mental health system. And basically this doctor, his point of view was, why would you give millions of dollars to a system that failed? Well, how can we prove that? Well, he pulled out 7 medical charts of 7 of the boys in the country, and they all were seeking psychiatric help, and they were all medicated. So if we're funding something that we know statistically is not showing results, it's going to take releasing a lot of ego and a lot of arrogance to surrender and maybe go to people like me that have healed fully from some very serious stuff and say, what did you do scientifically? So the doctors that hire me, I will say in the beginning, they will admit after like 4 sessions, they will admit to me how arrogant they are, how they didn't know a lot of the stuff. And a lot of the stuff that I think I addressed in the beginning is really simple, fundamental stuff. But let's face it, if you don't have the basics, you can't build a house, the foundation, incorrectly. It's just that simple. Mm-hmm. So people aren't breathing properly. Like they're literally not using their diaphragmatic muscles properly. And their breath patterns deal with psychology. People are not walking in proper alignment. So that, these are basic fundamental things that you do all day long. And so if you're doing them incorrectly, you're setting yourself up. So for me, back then I was so broken and I felt like, I have to have these fancy degrees on my wall. And now I know I don't. I know that what I have, the knowledge and wisdom I have, comes from experience. And I really think that's the future of where we're going in society. It's experience. I mean, we're kind of going back to our ancestors, when you were in a tribe and somebody put a nice little plant potion together to heal the virus that was going around in the tribe, and they drank it and everybody felt better. That was the potion. So they were like, oh, what did you use? I think that we're in a society where people who hire me now, they've done all the psychology. They've done 10, 20 years of psychology, psychiatry, meds, EMDR, EFT, psychic conscious bars, you name it. And I keep charts of it. I've logged it because if I feel there's something else that's productive besides the Kundalini brain protocols and electrolyze reduced water, if I think there's something else that's worth, I'm gonna find it. I'm the type of person, I want to be the best. I am, in my craft, but I just haven't. So I feel that there's going to have to be a lot of surrendering of the ego and restructuring of education in mental health.
So you're not anti educational system. You just believe that the educational system as it stands now continues to churn out individuals who kind of think the same way. And when it comes to mental health, in this day and age, it requires a lot of out of the box thinking. You have to approach it different because this is kind of like something new that we're grappling with. I mean, mental health issue has been around forever, but it's so vast, it's so profound, it's so pronounced, it's so that it's going to take everybody to their hands in this, not just trained educational people, but gifted people, people who
Yeah.
are thinking, everyone. It just
Yeah.
one set.
I do think that there can be a different structural education for mental
Okay.
health, is what I'm also saying. So we can let go of some of the Freud and some of the all that, and we can go to now in this day and age. There are some great people that have written great books after 30, 40 years in a career that we can just say, what have they learned? So and I think that mental health will no longer be about, I'm going to sit across from you and we're going to talk, because talking is analytical, but I'm going to sit across from you, I'm going to give you these mudras or breath patterns to rewire. Rewire is going to be the name of the game in the next couple of years. Mind training is going to be the name of the game. Where energy, what's your energy, your diet, your water, all this plays a part. But I'm not saying that there isn't a place for talking, but it has to be productive and it can't be excessive. And I will say, when I do work with a therapist or psychiatrist, and they're lovely people, but they like to read books. They like to, what book can I read to learn this? Instead of, no, you're going to do 31 minutes a day of this meditation. You have to do the meditation. Like, you can't just read something and get it. We're rewiring. So I think there needs to be actually a whole new type of training for the people who want to be in the mental health.
Right.
That's just my opinion.
Fine. Now, my next question is going to bring me back to something you said earlier. What do you think are the three worst issues our nation is facing, and what do you think the solution may be for each problem? Now, you talked about the mass shootings, and the bulk of the perpetrators, suspects, happen to be white males. I think racism should be treated like a mental illness. If we crawl into the mind of white supremacists and we get into their thinking, he or she says, I am more smarter, I am a better human being than you because I am white. Listen to the words that just came out of my mouth. That sounds crazy. If we can crawl into the mind of a sexist, Heather, you will never be smarter than me. You will never be more successful than me. You will never be stronger than me in any aspect, whether that's emotional, mental, or physical, because I am a man. Those words that just came out my mouth is lunacy. So when are we going to get to the point where we start dealing with racism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, like mental issues, which I truly believe they are, and it's one of the greatest threats, along with a lot of other things, climate change, that we're dealing with today.
That's such an amazing point. You put it so well. I think if we don't have diverse leadership, whether it's in a company, so if you see, like, I posted on my Facebook page, it was an old post. It was a picture of 2015, all the CEOs for a lot of the health insurance companies. They were all men, 5 of them were white men, and they were all making millions of dollars per year. I mean, their salaries were extremely, like, most health workers are making $40,000 a year, and they're making like $1 million a day. Like, it's really extreme. So when you study these things, and then our government, obviously, I would love to see a female president. I think we have women that are capable of that job at this point. I would love to see a lot more minorities in Congress. So if we don't start to filter and have women and minorities in these upper jobs, not just one, the token who has to play the game, right? Because we know that, but many of them, then we're going to start to get more diverse mentality in general. But unfortunately, and I really, my brother is a white man and I love him and I adore him. But in general, when we study, in general right now, what's happening with the Me Too sex, a lot of them are white men. And when we study the shootings, a lot of them are white boys. And when we study the CEOs who have tons of money, I mean, it's just there. And nobody can deny that stat. So my question too is, if you are being brought up as a white male, if you are being brought up with a higher conscious family, I think the goal is to show them diversity early on, and to show them through volunteer and through different types of activities that we are all one. If we build the ego, so we have to think of the psychology. I remember my mom saying that her brother was treated differently than her. Boys were treated better than the girls. Boys were, they could get away with more. Well, so you're right. This is a DNA programming of entitlement that we have to strip and release. And the truth of the matter is there is a mental illness, and I don't speak about this a lot. A lot of people, who am I going to share this with? But I have had to walk away from a lot of jobs because I have been approached sexually from the boss, or approached. I've gone, it would shock people. I've gone to a meeting at a restaurant with somebody I just met to talk about the Japanese medical advice. And in one meeting, they have approached me about being their partner without even knowing anything, sexual interaction, where I feel it's very inappropriate. I've been in many inappropriate situations, and I've lost a lot of jobs from it. And that's partly why I've had to become my own business. And I encourage other women that come there, have their own businesses, because you don't understand what it's like to not feel safe, being present with somebody that's looking at you as an object. So this is I think you're exactly right. It's a very, very serious subject matter right now. And
because how are we going to heal as a country when you have people walking around the earth thinking that other people are beneath them, because of their skin color or their gender or their sexual orientation? There's no way it's going to happen. You can't heal until you believe in your mind everyone is as equals. That's the first step before even healing. Like, you can't heal if you don't think people are on the same footing as you.
That's, I think, part of I've always been my opposition with organized religion. It seems too tribal, and it judges, and it has created a lot of deaths. For the sake of what? I feel that the new religion should be love everyone, kindness, try to be the Christ consciousness within. The Jesus that I know hanged out with everybody, didn't judge people, welcomed the mental illness, and he wasn't in organized religion, the one that I really resonate with. He wasn't sitting in a building teaching. He was sitting on the streets teaching. Right. And that's what I do. I mean, when I work with I do go and try to help the homeless, and that's a very complicated issue. and try to help people. But I feel that tribally mentality can really quickly change into, this is our way and this is the way. And there's, there's no other way of looking at it. So like, there's a lot of evangelists who have read my book who asked me the question, do you believe that Jesus died for our sins? And I said, I believe that Jesus died to teach us something.
Right.
I believe that he's showing us how we can die and be resurrected in this life. And science is showing reincarnation. Science is showing, the doctors are showing, like when they talk to 10 people who come back after being dead for 10 minutes, they all have the same experiences and they're all blissful. So this gay person didn't go to hell. I'm sorry to say. And this person, science is already showing that. And I think science is going to move that even further. And that excites me, because this whole old school, literal old school of religion, I think is holding people separated. And, and I always say, and they say to me, they're like, well, you're not going to the same place I'm going then. And that makes me very sad. I mean, they say it all the time. And I'm like, I'm good with that. I'm good with it. You know what I mean? It's such a judgment. And what I find with evangelists is when I talk to them, and I'm going to say this, they get very angry and upset with me. And I find that intriguing. Like, if you really believe and feel in your heart what you're saying, why would you get upset? Why would you get upset at me? You should be a child of love. And what I do is I practice love by saying, I love you, even though we disagree. I love you. It's all good. And that to me shows that I have the wealth. I live the Christ in me. I don't have to go to no school, no box, no book. It is in me. And it's frustrating, And then they come back. They always come back trying to want to talk to me. And after a while, it's just draining, because it's the same sentence. It's a brainwashing to me. It's the same sentence, and they can't see outside the box. Part of me in meditation is exploring the possibilities. I have felt Jesus beside me. I have messages from Jesus. I'm not going to trust any human being. I'm going to follow what I feel. And I teach my clients that. I tell my clients, I do not put me on a pedestal. I'm going to teach you tools to heal and be able to connect in a way that you feel comfortable with, that empowers you. Love and kindness. So I don't know. It's complicated, man. It's complicated.
It is, but a lot of it is not, because I think what you talked about, tribalism, goes back to what I was saying with racism, sexism, homophobia, and xenophobia. It's like the Democrats is one tribe, the Republicans is one tribe, Christians are one tribe, and within the Christian faith, you have Catholic, Seminary Adventist, Pentecostal is a tribe, atheist is another tribe, black, white, men is one tribe, women is one tribe. So we have all these tribes. No one is talking to each other. You have some tribes that actually think to this day they're better than the other tribe based on their beliefs. Mm-hmm. And we're not getting anywhere. Mm-mm. And then you have some tribes who are fighting against other tribes that I don't even understand. You have a vegetarian tribe fighting against a vegan tribe because the vegan tribe don't eat cheese, but they eat cheese. You have atheists and humanists fighting. Hey, do you believe in a talking snake? No, neither do I. We're on the same team. There's no reason to fight against each other. Like, I don't understand why people are fighting over minutia in this country. It doesn't make any sense. We're wasting time and saliva fighting each other. It doesn't make any sense. We're all one tribe. And you know what it's called? It's called the human tribe.
Yes.
We're all one. And for some reason or the other, it's just a concept that we in this country refuse to grasp. Mm-hmm. So it's complicated, yeah, but really it's not.
No.
if we just follow the basic principles of just loving, caring, being compassionate, being concerned about people, no matter what they look like, what their physical attributes are, whatever. But we're so stuck in that bubble. And it's insane.
Yeah, I feel too, the one thing that sort of upsets me about the literal idea of heaven and hell that the old school has, and when I talk to them is, you read my book. I spent a lot of years in what I would consider hell consciousness, severe pain, severe darkness, and now I'm in heaven. I describe my consciousness now as in heaven. It's so amazing to wake up and not be in pain. I never thought I would see that day. And so for me, it's like, I feel like this whole idea that, oh, you're going to go to hell is sort of like a threat, or something. And I'm like, I don't believe that consciousness. I don't believe that that's what it is. And the other thing that sort of I feel like, if you say, oh, I believe in Jesus Christ, then you're going to heaven. I don't think that that's how it works. I think that gives people a Band-Aid or excuse not to work on their problems and their sins. And I think we're here as souls to work on our problems, our sins, and to evolve. So if you don't have any consequences to that, if you can just say, I believe in this, so I don't have to do anything. It's another thing of our, like, I'll take a pill and everything will be all right. It's just sort of a quick, easy mentality. Working through trauma is not easy. That's
Right.
why a lot of people are addicted to something, whether it's alcohol or drugs. It's not easy.
Right.
It's hard. It's hard work. But that's cleaning up your karma, your consequences. So my whole psychology is very different than that psychology. So it goes back to sort of that mind thinking and psychology. Whereas I feel it's kind of arrogant to say to somebody, oh, if you don't say this or believe this, then you're going this way. It's like, who am I to?
And let's be honest, people like trauma, people like drama, people like, we talk a lot about Donald Trump having all of these negative traits. There are more people walking around this country like Trump than not.
I
And
agree.
America does not want to face that reality. But I know a lot of people in my personal life, they carry themselves, they have an aura. Now, we can judge him when he gets up and he talks about a particular group, or he feels himself because he's wealthy or he's a businessman or he's this privileged. No, a lot of us feel the same way in this country. A lot of us feel privileged. A lot of us feel that we have bluster, that we can stick our chest out, that we're better than other nations. We have the best healthcare system. We have the best education system. We have the best socials. And we don't. So we're just as crazy as he is.
I love that.
He is a reflection of who we are as a
Absolutely.
and we're grappling with it in a way that we don't know how. We don't know what to do.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
And so here we are.
I think we should leave it on that note. I think that was a brilliant statement.
Okay, on that note, before we go, Heather, can you tell us a little bit about the website?
Oh, okay. So if you're interested in any of this trauma work, you can find me at healingpain.solutions. And on that website, you can, if you just click, you can receive a few free chapters of my book if you're interested in reading my book. And I talk about my private coaching on there. And then I have some online programs, and those are designed for people that want to try something out before setting up a consultation and seeing if they want to actually do some trauma coaching. And obviously I coach on Zoom, and everybody's staying still now. Eventually, maybe in the fall, people do fly in and do intensives in person with me. So that's healingpain.solutions. And a good email to find me is Heather Ferri, Ferri official @gmail.com.
Okay. And you all can also find a lot of the interviews that we've done in the past on the podcast and audio version and also video version as well. There will be lots of more material and content to come. Heather, thank you so much for this interview today.
Thank you for having me.
Can I say I really appreciate you and everything that you have done for me since you've came into my life. It's been a wonderful journey so far. I'm looking forward to more wonderful things happening, more collaboration, and once again, great book. Can you see it?
Victim to
There you
victory.
go. There you go.
Thank
All right.
you.
Well, thank you for joining us today. I am Remington. That's Heather Ferri. Until next time.